Before we begin this lecture, I want to remind you to always reason beyond your initial reactions to philosophical works. Sticking to your initial reaction without deeply considering it is not philosophy. In philosophy, it's the thought that counts. But further, philosophy can be disturbing, even offensive. It can make people uncomfortable to deeply reflect on ideas that are contrary to their own. To take up philosophy, especially ethics, you have to ask yourself, am I ready to entertain the possibility that I'm wrong about something I believe? If so, let's get started. Ethics is also known as moral philosophy. So what we're going to be talking about in this class is philosophical theories of morality. All of these theories presume to tell us what makes something morally good. We'll look at many theorists, but the primary are Aristotle, Immanuel Kant, and John Stuart Mill. Even though they're all concerned with morality, they each take a substantially different approach. There are other theories and theorists, but these are the big three we're going to be considering primarily. There are a number of approaches to this area of study. There's, for example, the descriptive approach, that is, what some people think is moral, or what some group of people or culture thinks is moral, and just a description of that. There's also prescriptive ethics, or normative ethics, theories that prescribe how we ought to act, and applied ethics, which is how to use prescriptive ethics, or normative ethical theories. And finally, metaethics. Metaethics is interested in the meaning and the basis of moral terms and theories. Some prominent theories include relativism, ethical egoism, and cultural relativism, and these fall into the relativistic camp. There's also the universalist or absolutist camps, such as hedonism, divine command theory, natural law theory, Kantian ethics and other types of deontology, utilitarianism and other kinds of consequentialism, feminist ethics, and virtue ethics. A good place to start when introducing the idea of moral philosophy is the big question, so what? What is the purpose of morality? Why should I want to be moral? Some of these answers could be to please yourself, to please God, to respect people, maybe a combination of those, to respect people and God, or maybe people, God, and reason, to maximize everyone's pleasure, to live the good life. This last question of the good life can seem either strange or fundamental. On the one hand, is being good related to the good life, whatever you might think the good life is? On the other hand, maybe it seems obvious that if you're not good, then you can't be living a good life. That'll be something to think about as we progress through this course. If you believe the point of being moral is to please yourself, then that would place you in a relativistic or hedonistic camp. If you believe it's to please God, that might put you somewhere in divine command theory or natural law. If you think it's to respect people, then natural law or Kantian ethics might be where you belong. To respect people, God, and reason, you may still find yourself in natural law, but you may also find yourself in Kantian ethics, as it's grounded in rationality. If you think it's to maximize everyone's pleasure, you may be a utilitarian. If you think it's to live the good life, whatever that may be, you might be a virtue ethicist. So, there are different types of moral value. There's so-called intrinsic moral value or intrinsic value. Something with intrinsic moral value has value in and of itself. It doesn't matter what it produces, it doesn't matter what it does, it's valuable in itself. Then there's instrumental value. Something has instrumental value if it produces something that is perceived as valuable. We also alluded to types of moral theories earlier. There's relativistic moral theories, ethical subjectivism, we mentioned cultural relativism, and so on. And then there's the universalist or absolutist, which are religion-based often deontological or consequentialist, rights-based, virtue-based, and so on. An important distinction to keep in mind when we're discussing moral theories is something called the fact-value dichotomy, or the is-ought dichotomy. Factual statements are positive, not in the sense that they're happy or something. It's just that they're saying something is the case. They're scientific, objective, or testable. This is the is part of the dichotomy. Then there are value statements. These are normative. They're moral. They're concerned with right and wrong. This is the ought part of the dichotomy. The oldest major moral theory we're going to be looking at is Aristotelian virtue ethics. Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle were all concerned with virtue, but we'll focus mostly on Aristotle's version of virtue ethics. Unlike other theories, for virtue ethics, moral action is secondary to being a good person. Becoming moral is the goal. Acting moral is a byproduct. There is no list of rules for all situations, and that's one of the common objections to this view. For additional reading, I'll link the Nicomachean ethics below. The second oldest of the major theories we'll be looking at is Kantian ethics, a kind of deontology. Deontology is an umbrella term for moral theories holding that what is right or morally good is not determined by consequences, but depend on rules, and especially for Kant, on our intentions. On Kantian ethics, what is right is so on account of the duty that is being met by the action. The ends do not justify the means on this view. Intentions to be moral matter, not consequences. For additional reading, I'll link Kant's Groundwork on the Metaphysics of Morals below. Finally, the most recent moral view, or ethical lens that we'll be looking through, is utilitarianism, a form of consequentialism. Consequentialist theories focus on the outcomes, or consequences of actions, to determine their morality. On utilitarianism, an action is moral if the consequences of our actions maximize utility. Utility is good. Good is roughly synonymous with kinds of pleasure on this view. So, the ends can justify the means for a utilitarian. If you're interested in additional reading, I'll link utilitarianism below also. In the coming lectures, we'll examine a variety of moral theories, but we'll emphasize these, the big three in most of our applied ethics. However, when we get to applied ethics, we'll only be looking at universalist or absolutist views since, as we'll see, relativistic views don't go anywhere and can't tell us anything about morality. Indeed, in questions of morality, it will seem that relativism can only remain silent.